Hello, 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 and welcome to My Empty Hands, a podcast about the martial arts with a focus on Kempo. And so I've got another wonderful guest with me today. Got Sal Luciano. Luciano. I'm so terrible about pronunciation of names. So I've got to probably got to work on that a little bit more. But so yeah, we're gonna get into your story. Where you got started, how the martial arts found you, how Kempo found you, and just talk about whatever else we happen to come across. But yeah, and so where did it all begin for you, and we'll go from there.
Sure. For me, well, I come from Judo and Aikido, my mother arts. So for me, Aikido, the spiritual discipline of that, the structure of it, the pure discipline of Aikido, and into my early teens, into my early 20s, really, learning that discipline, learning that culture, and then my judo training as well. So kind of crossbred between those two things. And really, I loved it, the grappling, the takedowns, in judo. And there are certain things in Aikido that, you can apply to that, like certain restraints, certain holds, certain things like that. So I did that for a very long time. Loved my training, got my first Dan in Aikido and then, other rankings in judo. And I stuck with that for a very long time because, there's always so much questions, so much to learn. People would come in as guests and they'd be from other countries or other parts of the state. So, and everybody's body moves different. I know mine certainly does.
Hmm.
So, and you would learn a certain technique and you could play with it. You could do that in judo. Whereas in Aikido, it is a beautiful discipline, a beautiful way of life. But I feel that, and there are other movements, like there is Aikijitsu out there. So there's more different styles that are more like, like the Japanese police use like Aikijitsu as opposed to soft circle Aikido. That's just the way it is. So again, crossing that culture and really, asking questions. And I would advise anyone in any martial arts training, always ask questions, always be respectful of your teaching, be respectful of yourself. But, if you have the mat alone and you just want to like, hey, why do we move this way? How can we improve it? Can a kick be incorporated? Stuff like that. So really, martial arts really gave me that foundational discipline that's taken me to excellent places in my life. I was blessed with excellent teachers. God has been good to me in other ways, but it all started with, martial arts, learning to respect yourself, the people around you, and that's the most important thing with any martial arts training, the efficacy of what you're learning, the people that you're with. And that's really how it started for me. And, I just kept plugging along with it all through junior high, high school, and just loved it, and then did some basic kickboxing, basic boxing to try to see, okay, well, maybe a jab will work, maybe this will work, and try to like cross train disciplines as much as possible. So that's important too. Cross training in your training is important. Like if you want to learn the ground, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, American wrestling, you do that for 18 months to a year, you have a solid ground game. You just have to know how to move. And, so again, always add to your foundational arts, always add to what you're doing. That way, because the street, in a self-defense situation, you're not an action hero, right? So it's not going to be like a movie. They're going to come out, they're going to do this, and they're going to grab you here. And I mean, I wish it worked that way. That would be beautiful. But in the street is the street in a self-defense situation. So, and you're not gonna look good doing any of this either. So the fantasies of that and, again, with the right training, with the right trainers, the right community internally, that nonsense will vacate the brain as soon as possible. And also, I feel too, know your surroundings. Know you better than anybody will, right? So, you know, maybe if a place is too rough and tumble, hey, don't go in there. Or maybe if somebody, so common sense things, which is not so common. If you can do these things and say, how can I avoid, possibly self harm, possibly having to harm someone else? because the other side of self-defense is you need to know every state has different self-defense laws. So where you are in Texas or the South in general, they have all kinds of, you know, genuine self-defense laws, genuine stand your ground laws. Some states don't. So no state to state what that means, because if you pull that off and God forbid you have to, in the course of self-protection of yourself or someone else, take a human life, in those instances, most states, that's manslaughter, and the law reads the same as if you were to shoot someone in other states. So knowing that, and knowing that you are the one in control of you and the places you go and the people you're with. So if you have a brain, which most people do, then you need to utilize your common sense and go, you know what? Somebody calls me a bad name or anything else, I'm going to walk away. And that's what you should do. And again, with ethical training that is there, rather it is from the most traditional to the most unorthodox, anyone who is selling a quality philosophy in spirit, mind, and in practice, that's the first thing they would teach you. So I would say focus on those things and then, know yourself. And really, I started very young. So, I had the privilege of when I'm going through those developmental stages, also being a person on the spectrum, the high IQ side. So off the chart smart and socially a work in progress, but a good work in progress. You know, you have to be honest about those things and say, "Hey, I communicate differently. I may under communicate at times. I may over communicate at times." You have to know your mind and, and be honest, because the more honest you are in your training, the better you're going to be as a human being, right? So that's the point of the discipline of the martial, which is, and then the art side of it. So, you need to do what you feel is right. But, I just feel that for, young men and women, you need to, take a few classes, take a few intro classes, do your homework, read books, whatever you need to do. So you go in there knowing, okay, I'm putting my time in this, my means in this, and my heart and soul in this. I need to feel good when I leave here going, did I accomplish something positive or did I just waste time? So
Gotcha.
that's pretty much how I view that. And I would say that, you need to find that good community. And if you can, you should. And if you can't, don't get discouraged and give up. I mean, because a lot of people, they'll try to focus on too many arts at once. And, again, if you can try to focus on two, that's great. But, try to find the foundational art that works for you, how your body moves, how your mind works. Make sure you like the people there. That's the main thing. I mean, the communal part of it is if you don't like the people, you're not going to go. So
Excellent.
you have
Yeah.
you have to make sure of that, and then, really, give it that time to be like, and again, when I say time, honestly, give it a year. Give it a year, because you know what? It's new. So, of course, new people, new experiences, everyone is at a different place in life. You have to try, if you can at times, put your selfishness aside and go, I have my issues. These other people do too, and always communicate that. And if there's ever a problem, say, hey, if there's an issue, if you feel disrespected, if you feel that I have done something to, you know, violate you in training, let's communicate that. Because again, you want an environment where, you can communicate that and you can learn. So, punch in, do what you can, really take that time and really work your basics, whether that's in Aikido or Judo or Kempo, because your basics is what's going to save you. You're going to have time to do that. And that's the most important thing. And really, I still work the basics of those things, because again, the body will change whether you want it or not, no matter how many vitamins or special waters or whatever elixirs,
Mhm.
that's just the way it is. So, when I began my Kempo journey, it was in Shaolin Kempo, the Fedbalari system. But if you look through the history of Kempo, it's, James Matosi, William Chow, Ed Parker, Al Tracy, Chuck Sullivan, Larry Tatum, Jeffrey Speakman, Joe Rabella, who I love, and we'll get to him, and Sean Kelly, and the Nick Serio system, the American Kempo system. That's what I'm training in now. So that's basically the founding fathers and the students of American Kempo, Shaolin Kempo. That's Ralph Castro, and to a greater degree, that's Fred Villari. And, I trained in the Villari system for many years. I loved my training. I loved the kata. I love the culture. I am not a Kempo apologist or politician. That's just me. And, I think in life, as you do a podcast, the more successful you are in anything, you will always have your detractors and your haters, and I think that's what it is. That being said, you have to have the fine line between, yes, I want to make a living, but is this something that can everybody take part of in that space? And that's across the martial arts world, really. That's not just exclusive to Kempo. I think with Fred Villari, a lot of it is, his massive success in the 80s. I mean, his massive success, 500 schools, and I think that would have, and then I think self-promotion, which, everybody did at some point self-promote. And I think, again, the internal politics of the day. I mean, the man has transitioned to the other side, rest in peace. So, I'd like to see, and in the Shaolin Kempo world, at least in the States, that's really Fred Villari, that's Charles Matera, Jim Passard, and Steve Rendazzo, those were his top students. They, since formed their own, which is great, but I would love to see, in the Shaolin Kempo world, the same unity that we have in the American Kempo world, right? So, because you need that, you don't wanna self-isolate, you wanna say, "Okay, the past is the past, let's move forward." So, I think in the Kempo world in general, but especially in the Shaolin Kempo world, that's the most important thing because, if you like what you're doing, if you love what you're doing, like me, I love my Shaolin Kempo training, good people, good community. For me, though, the way my brain works, I read every book and microfilm, and I did the deep dive into, so the Kempo system, American Kempo system I'm training in now is the Nick Serio system. And that was the gentleman who trained Fred Villari. And he was the guy that instructed him on American Kempo. Fred Villari was a second degree in that system when it was United Studios of Self-Defense, Charles Matera, and those three guys, and then it expanded. Um, and then Mr. Serio, he went back to his system, and that's pretty much the Shaolin Kempo explosion of the day.
Gotcha.
And you
Uh,
know,
I wanna just kind of jump back here a little bit for a moment. I'm curious, going back to when you started in Aikido and Judo. I'm wondering what was the driving factor for getting involved in martial arts. So for like me, I grew up watching the martial art movies
yeah,
and was always excited about that, and then training specifically in Kempo, because of the movie The Perfect Weapon. I got
Jeffrey
involved
Speakman at his finest. Yeah.
in Kempo, but, I'm curious what was the reasoning behind, getting into Aikido and Judo at the start for you?
Sure. Well, as I said earlier, being a high IQ spectrum guy, the culture of the day was not the culture back then. It was, if you're, quite tiny and you have your stuff, you need to learn how to keep yourself safe and the people around you safe. And the movies were a big influence as a kid, obviously. But as far as like, looking back, it's like, just being smaller than the other kids, having that developmental challenge. It was, unfortunately, you have to defend yourself at times and learn how to do so safely. So that was the big factor for me of, as I say, walk away. But there are times when you have to utilize training for self-preservation. So, that was a big part of it for me. And obviously the movies, because I was like, I want to move like that. I want to move, obviously, that was the whole thing. I mean, for me, it was Bruce Lee. I mean, for me, it was, I've seen everything he's done. I love it. It's tremendous. But that's really what it was. Those key factors, other than just the entertainment factor, was, and again, with Aikido and Judo, the mental discipline that's involved, So, as I get older and matured and, as society made the right shift to, understanding these things helped. But I mean, again, you have to just be in a space where you have to learn these things, especially someone like myself and others, and at times you'll use it for self-preservation of yourself and others. So that was really, as a child and a teenager, those were the big factors for me, like, and the self-confidence and the self-worth. So, and which is the beautiful thing about martial arts in general. Like if you find the right fit, you will grow tremendously as a person. And that's really a big factor for me.
Mhm. And so what was the reason, what brought you to Kempo? Why did you, decide to start training in Kempo?
Well, for me, it was, I always had a love and a fascination for it. You know what I mean? Ed Parker, just to see these guys move and just to see the syllabus of information and the syllabus of just the perpetual motion and just seeing that and really going, I can move like that in certain ways. I can adjust, maybe I can take from this and make it a little bit more that. I mean, really the amount of practical wisdom in Kempo was the big thing. And plus at Parker trained Elvis. I think that's pretty cool. So that was another, I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. So I was like, my Shaolin Kempo journey began, and it was great. I learned a lot of good American Kempo techniques because, again, as I say, Nick Serio gave the knowledge to Fred Villari for the American Kempo and the forms, and it was good. But I just, for me, the way my brain works, it's kind of like the Road Runner, where it goes and goes and goes and stops and stops and stops. So at a certain juncture for me, it was like, well, I've read every book, I've seen film, I probably know more about that system, honestly, than the people who've trained in it for that for 30 years because I'm an inquisitive person. So for me, it was, loving what I was doing, loving the people there. It was, well, let me reverse engineer it and go to the mother of that system, which was the Serio system, and, learn the American Kempo basics. And in the Serio system, like the pinions and are like bunkai, like it's self-defense based. So, it's form and function, practical application, which I love, because the way my brain works, if I can take that apart and piece that together and make it work for me, then I'm all for it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. So, I love to learn. I'm that guy. I love to read, I love to work out. Anything I can do to, absorb positive knowledge and use it in life, I'm all for it, man.
Nice, very nice. So we have the Aikido, the Judo, we have the Shaolin Kempo. Is there any other systems that you've gotten involved with?
I've done some Tai Chi. I've enjoyed that. I mean, and again, I've taken that apart too fairly recently. And there's certain things like for self defense. So, I mean, again, I love to learn, and again, I think that, when we talk about the tradition is one thing, but then remember, God forbid you're in a situation where you have to apply this, you have to be able to judge out, okay, there's the tradition and the art, but the martial, you need to focus that on, like, and that's what it is. And I think that the beautiful thing about Kempo is they've done this. American Kempo has done this thing where, doesn't matter if you're 6'5" or 4'11", you stick with it, you put your mind to it, you can learn this beautiful practical applications are to keep yourself safe. And that's the genius of American Kempo, where they figured that out. And I think if Ed Parker was alive, he'd still be refining the system. I mean, look at Jeff Speakman, one of his last students with Kempo 5.0. He's put a ground game in there, he's put a grappling game in there, all kinds of additions. And I think that with arts, I think that there's no shame in traditionalizing. There's no shame in keeping it one way. But, you have to understand, all fights start standing up. They probably won't go to the ground, but if they do, and you're most vulnerable on the ground, which is get off the ground, how can you, in a one-on-one situation or multiple situation, end it quickly and keep yourself safe. So I think as Kempo is growing, and it is, I think the newer generations of it are gonna you're gonna see it explode into something different for the positive, you know? And I think the living masters see this too. So, I think they must have, this is my conspiracy theory, they must have an idea where it's like, okay, we have to incorporate American wrestling, some form of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, something because again, that's just where it's going. And that's an exciting thing. But I also think like anything else, there'll be the people that want to keep it traditional. And I think that's great. I think that's, if you want to call that a martial discipline, a martial practice in that way. But I also think too, you have to be open to the idea that, you know, we have to evolve like everything. Like there was the Model T, and now we have, there's just a digression of anything, evolution is what it is. And, for my Kempo journey, when I had the privilege, oh my God, of talking to Joe Rubella, I love this man. I love him. And he's like, call me anytime. So I call him. I thought we were going to talk for like 10 minutes. 4 hours later, we're just going back and forth. And Joe is the Michelangelo of Kempo. I mean, my God. And he'll just go off on these funny stories, which I love. Oh, I was there and this and that. And let me tell you. And furthermore, and I mean, it was like talking to the Mickey Mantle of Kempo. I mean, God bless that man and what he's still doing. You know what I mean? I mean, he's still learning. He's, wushu and kung fu and Wing Chun Eskrima. I mean, people like that. And again, he's of the original generation. Like he was there. So, and he's the guy that says, even him, we have to eventually, okay, admit a lot of the stuff too doesn't work. And what I mean is, again, back to that traditional thing of yes, beautiful tradition, but okay, it's not going to be a front punch and a half moon step. It's not, it's going to be a haymaker. It's going to be that. And that's what it is. So I think, anything traditionalized, going back to my original training, it's like, yeah, you have to acknowledge this is what it is. And, I think as far as Kempo goes, that will get there. That is getting there. Cause again, people come in with, everybody's cross trained at this point. It's not like we're back in the 50s where it's like, okay, there was the 5 places and the 5 people teaching it, and that was it. Now everybody's cross training something else. So the good thing about that is you can go with your repertoire once you've built the trust and go, well, I come from this where we do a blade kick, or I come from this where we do more boxing forms, or more hand movement, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or capoeira where it's more pantomime with the body. And again, they're not going to reinvent the system, but they'll go, show me what you mean. And if you make that applicable, you go, you know what? We can tweak this. And that's what it is, little tweaks, little things that you can improve it on. And, as the generations continue to go forward, not to eliminate traditional, but to go, okay, instead of doing 5 swords, right? The prime example, beautiful. But again, how do we tweak it where, hey, my body doesn't move that way? Or can we add something else? Or can we put a lot more grappling into certain things, And it's getting there because again, the newer generation of people are willing to release humor the idea that maybe we can tweak it. And that's a good thing I feel for Kempo because it gives you, and again, it gives the upcoming students, you feel more of that family community where, hey, I helped improve something that's 80 years old. I helped do something for the positive. So that's another thing too. You gotta think about when the older people transition on, the younger people who wanna keep it up. So and again, I'm seeing that with American Kempo. It's slowly but surely, but, it's happening, and that's great. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful Kempoists out there who are really, pushing that envelope, and that's a good thing. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that in your training as well, where people go, "How can I tweak this? How can I make it better?" With respect to the founders of the system, respect to as you go through your Q ranks, as you go through these things, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I think that's part of the where I see the evolution of Kempo, and I see that eventually, and it is. I've seen it. You're seeing it now. We're seeing it together, which is a wonderful thing. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think that with American Kempo, it's such a universal family where You have a question about something, you can call someone, you can email, and you can do what we're doing. We can have a discussion and go, well, I think this or I think that, respectful, a respectful back and forth. And, to me, that's what the martial arts is all about. You can have a difference of opinion, difference of philosophy, but that's a good thing. And it's a good thing to question, within reason and go, well, I think this, why can't we do it this way? And then you know what? You have to entertain. You could be wrong. So, someone who's been doing it 40 years, they could explain to you and you could learn something. So that's the beauty of American Kempo is again, there's always going to be questions and it's always going to be growing. I mean, the circular motion, it's going to keep growing in that bigger circle. And again, Kempo, American Kempo is very generational. So anybody who's doing like Parker, I mean, the Tracy's are probably the closest, like to first gen Parker, because they were one of his original his first students. So you have that. As I said, you have Sean Kelly, who is keeping the torch going in that way. Others of that too. So you're seeing that. I mean, again, I think, as I say, the older, I mean, Chuck Sullivan's in his 90s, God bless him, he's still going strong. So, you're seeing that, and also too, you're seeing a meeting of minds because I think now with American Kempo, I think the internal politics of the day, it's always going to be there, but it's not as upfront because again, people coming in now are, 8 generations removed where, they weren't there when, the forms were invented. They weren't there when this defection happened and that defection happened. So you're seeing more unity because the younger people are like, yeah, that stinks, but we got to go forward the right way. So, we got to put down the rock here. And that's a beautiful thing to see, like in the American Kempo system I'm training in and been training in for a while. He was a dear friend of Mr. Parker, Raymond Serio. And Ed Parker gave him a ninth dan in in American Kempo. So there's a lineage there and there's a good community there, and I think if Mr. Parker were alive, I think he would, have like a meeting of the minds and go, yeah, we're going to improve it, but we're going to have no negativity towards each other because we all came in this to better ourselves. We all before you get this ranking and that ranking, we all walked on the mat to go. We're gonna strap up. We're gonna and that's where it's going. I mean, there's so many good quality in Kempo and in the martial arts, like what I tell people is you're gonna learn more from the students than you will from the teacher. Because when you're on the mat with someone, if they're behaving perhaps in a negative fashion, you can go, well, they didn't start that. That was either put in. So you're going to learn more from just the students, just from that community, and you will. And again, I look at it like if you have quote unquote a bad experience, okay, you need to learn from and go, how can I better myself in that, and how can I not do that thing? Right? So that's another thing. I mean, most people get so discouraged. And I'm like, no, no. If it's going negatively, okay, should you walk away? It's up to you. But if you do, glean from what did I learn from that? So when I ever teach anything, I will never do that thing. And that's not just germane with martial arts, but what you can carry forth from your teachings and which makes you a better person. So, I mean, that's my those are my opinions. You know,
Yeah. So in all of your time training, have you uh got into the teaching side of that, or are you doing
in
any teaching?
it in Aikido, I'll do some like self-defense stuff. Judo, I'll do that. But I'm very particular on, when I take a student, you know what I mean? Like, a young man or a young woman, I sit down with them and if they're of an age where the parent or the guardian is there, that's a conversation because, I don't want to see that be abused to the negative. I don't want to teach you something where you can do that and be, a perpetrator of violence, right? So that's first and foremost. And I'm pretty good reading people from the jump. I can kind of say, oh, but again, there could be a developmental thing there. So that's why you bring the parents into it and go, okay, he or she, what is the clinical issues, right? How can I, when I'm teaching you this and getting you on your way, how can I help you? What can I do? Because I'm only there when I teach it a certain amount of time, a certain amount of space. So, and again, I've been fortunate when I've taught judo things and when I've taught aikido things that I have a good community of parents where it's like, but you'll always have that thing where it's like you can tell when someone's a problem, right? So, I won't ethically do that because not only is that a violation of martial arts, that's, accountability and liability, right? Because, unfortunately, there are more schools and independent studios that have been sued for, okay, you put a loaded gun in someone's hand, they did this. Where'd you learn that? And they'll tell you. So, it comes down to responsibility, accountability, and all that. And, like when I see certain things online, like for me, I don't think knife defense stuff should be a public thing, in my opinion. If you build up years of trust and you want to learn that, but again, that's just like a pet peeve in general. I don't care what the art is. You know what I mean? I mean, I get like, yeah, you want to get monetized and you want to go on YouTube. I get the aspects of why, but again, you don't control unless you have a paywall, unless you have that. Who is learning this? Where is this information going? And just, that's another thing. Just because you have all this knowledge, you shouldn't just put it out into the wild with no rating system, no anything because you don't know. So, God forbid, like anything else that falls, if the nuclear keys fall into the wrong hands, right? So, you have to be aware of these things. And there are people who are and people who aren't. And, hey, to each your own. But, that's just a real pet peeve of mine. Um, stuff like that. Or, you know, people who are at a higher ranking thinking they're above, the internal stuff. But that's every art, really. That's not just germane to Kempo.
Hmm. Do you have any aspirations or interest in teaching Kempo?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, we're talking about that. So, when that comes, it'll come, but I'm in no rush because again, for me, it's like, I try to Kempoize everything I've learned. Like I try to, put in certain techniques, put in certain things. But it's like, how can I make my training better? So I'm always doing that. I'm always Kempoizing anything and everything I've learned, and, it's good. And, I mean, I love teaching where I said when I do a judo thing or aikido thing, so I really enjoyed the teaching of it. And again, sometimes this stuff that even I will tinker as I'm teaching and going, "Well, let me teach you this way, and let me teach you that way," because, again, everybody's body is different, so, the way I move is the way I move. That's how it is, right? So, and again, back to where this started with efficacy, right? Because, if I'm gonna teach, someone a judo thing that I wouldn't teach that to a lot of people. It's the trust is built where you have this in your arsenal after years of this, us being together, or even if it's a shorter span of time, I'm trusting you and I know you wouldn't abuse that. So that's a thing martial art wise. Like you really have to know your students and know yourself. So that's a big part of, what needs to happen. And it is happening, but if it doesn't, I just tell anyone, as I say, you'll learn more from the students, you'll learn more from the space, and, trust your instincts. And that's another thing. If you're going into a place where it's, very, again, just not legitimate as far as, you're just being pushed up the hill to be pushed up the hill, whatever the art is, you know, recognize that and go, okay, I may have this ranking, but do I honestly deserve this? Do I honestly deserve to be, and that's an individual thing. And I think the great thing about belt rankings and negative is, it started with judo and Jigaro Gano in judo. That was the first belt system, and then Gichi Fumakoshi was a friend of his, the father of karate, and here we are today. And it's one of those things where just because you have a third-degree brown or a second-degree black, you can still be heard out there in the world. So it's something to think about. And also, just because you have that higher ranking or rankings, that doesn't make you better as a person. Okay. That just means there's a level of competency you've reached. That doesn't mean, you're a general and you can bark orders and you can I mean, that's another thing. So, be aware of that in the martial art world. Like, being pushed is one thing, being owned is something else.
Yeah, there's a lot of different egos and mindsets and personality classes in the martial arts, and it's not just Kempo. All the arts suffer that, unfortunately, and that's just something that goes along with being human. We're flawed, but the hope with the training is that we work to become better individuals, better teachers, better students. We should always be striving to be better and to realize that you can't learn everything in one lifetime, in 100 lifetimes. So there's always something to strive for, always something to shoot for, and yeah, they should be more of a focus on the training versus trying to chase rank. One of the sayings, although the belt color show doesn't mean that you know, and yeah, unfortunately, there's some out there that don't aren't interested in that, and we have to make make that decision for ourselves of how we want to conduct ourselves, and uh, hopefully try and stay away from the politics and the drama, and just work on being better individuals. So I'm curious. So with all of your training, did you get into the competition side of it at all in any of the arts that you've trained? Or
Aikido, yes. Aikido. And the cool thing about that is, a lot of that, I mean, in the States, that's hard to find because it's dying off. It's not a very, marketable, you know what I mean? It's when they would have it, they'd have people from like Lithuania and stuff like that. And again, these are guys who have been doing it 30, 40 years, right?
Yeah, this is
So
actually pretty new to me. I didn't realize that there were Aikido competitions. Can you maybe kind of talk a little bit about how that works?
Sure. Well, someone in the States will house, be like, okay, if we're gonna do it, to support the dojo. And that's another thing, where the money goes in that, like it's going to keep the rent and isn't it? And all that good stuff. But also it's like, you will set it up with the senior she hands, whether it's in, wherever in Europe, Lithuania. Because I trained with a guy who was a senior Shihan, and he actually did the Aikido combat games. So, it was interesting to see, accomplished Aikidoists like that and really how they do it. And when you say competition, it's really they judge on how you execute the traditional form. So, if you look at, Zenkyo, Nikkyo, Toshionage, Kotegaishi, Motogaishi, your basics, and then Ukinagashi, the sword, how you do that and you trade off. With the uki, you become the crash test dummy for a while, and then it switches off. So, and you really learn that, and that was cool when they come and they really show you that, or they'll teach you some Indu training, which is the stick, and and that's cool because that's something that, and there's disciplines within Aikido. There's the wooden stick practice, which the last I've seen of that, that's more like I've seen a lot of that in Canada and Europe, but that's a discipline within the discipline, like the bow staff. That's a separate discipline. Whereas, when you're making extensions in Aikido, you know, you're making those movements, those empty hand movements to, if you had to use an implement, it was okay, this is, ukinagashi, this is sword, and this is that. So, it's a pretty it's like playing chess with your body basically, right? And, that's what I love when I can get into one of those and just learn. Even if you're watching this, even if you're just a spectator seeing, these senior Shihans who, went to Japan, you know what I mean? They did the whole spiritual, physical journey. I mean, that alone, just to watch them move. And a lot of those guys, they're in their 80s. They're older guys and they can still throw like they're 20 or 30, you know what I mean? Just flip you over and get you down. And, so that's cool. As I say, playing chess with your body, the experience though of being part of that. When you and again, you can trust that when you roll out, when you're being flipped, nothing breaks. That's the other thing too. That's why it's so soft circle because, using, ukanagashi, this sword, my favorite technique, monkeying with that alone and making that applicable when you kempoize that as well. Oh my God, it's like a perfect pizza. You know what I mean? It's a wonderful thing to do. So in the Aikido world, it's you learn the tradition and, again, like I would pick the brain of anybody. I'm that guy, right? So, I did one in, my God, 20, what are we in now? So 2017. It was, and the guy was very nice and, senior Shihan, and we're just talking about that. And, size does matter in arts, but especially too, this guy was huge. I mean, he was like 6 something and just a rock of a man. So, you know, him being able to control someone, he could use the traditional teachings and make that work because he's a bigger guy, he can muscle manipulation, how to guide someone myself, being 5'11", not tiny, but I'm not, a rock of a guy, right? So, just picking his brain and going, some things, that makes sense. And this doesn't make sense. So why do we do it? So again, it goes back to questioning respectfully and just saying, hey, I think this, but I actively entertain. Not only could I be wrong, I might be wrong, right?
Mm.
So, stuff like that, which I enjoy.
So does it
Judo,
does it work off of a system where like you're getting points, or I'm just trying to kind of think of
awesome.
it from the
Okay, right.
standpoint of like
No, you do get
in
you
a
do get points.
competition, you
No, you
getting
do
into
get
certain positions or getting a
yeah.
submission or
No, you do get that. You do. So when somebody taps out, they just throw it out, and they kind of go like that or whatever. So they tap or they'll bang on the tap out. So there's that too, because they will apply a little music to you. So you'll feel that right away when your arm is being bent a certain way or you're on the ground. So or your hand is being manipulated. So you do tap out, and it's also submission, but it's how did you execute? Like in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's the same thing. Like a double leg takedown. It's like how did we execute it, and how did you do that and not hurt your head or your neck or other things. So it's the same principle. You're being graded on technique, submission, and speed. That's a big thing too. But, also it's one of those things too where, not everybody's at a senior enough level. So they know that, I'm gonna go extra gentle. When I say gentle, they'll flip you, they'll get you on the ground, they'll pin you, and you'll tap out because you don't want your arm to break off. So that's good. So
okay, so it does work kind of similar to like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu
yes.
or a judo
Yes.
competition.
Because the founder of Aikido, it was more Aikijitsu based. It was much more the original style of it was Aikijitsu, Osensei. But then the devastation of World War II, he changed it to soft circle, and as you gain the trust of your uki, you'll learn some of the Aikijitsu. So it was purposely put as a pacifist art, and how to again, the mental part of it. And again, the way of harmony is a philosophy. You can apply that to anything, but you also have to know, okay, back to where this started again. The street doesn't work that way. So, again, you have to you understand that again, not being an action movie, it's like again, if you have to restrain someone, you get them down, you keep yourself safe, you get away, you in any teaching, but especially that's the foundation of Aikido is the non-violence of it. Just because you're learning this and when you cross train, and again, that's an individual thing. Like for me, that's how I see it. Like, hey, you could insult me and I'd walk away. So would you, because it's common sense, right? It would be like, hey, do I want to throw my life away over someone called me a really nasty thing? And the answer is no. So, that's what it comes down to. So I mean, and again, same thing with judo, it's the same thing. Yes, you can dismantle a person, but unless you're in danger of yourself or keeping someone safe, that's when you use this. This is not a parlor trick to be abused. I know a Kempo. This is not to be abused. It's not to show off as far as I can do this. And sure, why would you want to? Is the deeper well, why would you want to, right?
Mhm.
So, it goes back to efficacy in training, self-efficacy, and, again, knowing yourself and, you know you better than anybody will. So that's what it comes down to. And also knowing that just because you can, you shouldn't, and unless you're literally cornered, okay, God forbid you're in a situation where you have no choice. That's the line of no choice. They crossed into that to do that. I always say, walk away, run away. If they chase you, that's their problem.
Got you. Gotcha. Now, so I asked this of everyone that I've spoken with that has trained in multiple arts. Shifting back to the Kempo side of things, when you got involved in Kempo, did was there a difficulty period, a adjustment period from being in these other systems to getting into Kempo, or were you able to
Yes.
kind of pick it up?
Yes.
Kind
I
of
mean
how did
I
that
mean
go?
it was difficult because it was such a brand new thing, and there's such a syllabus of information, especially crossing Kempo culture. So, like, in the Shaolin world, that's heavy, kata and, that, but in American Kempo, there is kata, but in Shaolin, it's heavily kata based. So there was that, and again, just again, learning to move my body a different way. Like, okay, I have to learn how to extend this way. So it took me a while, but once I got down, I got down. But it took me, a long time to train my body really to move like that. It took a while. It took rigorously practicing. And that's the thing, practice, practice, practice. So now I can move that way, and my body's like, oh, this feels crazy, and then you get comfortable with it. So it took a while, but I was able to get there and recognize certain things because Kempo is a mix of everything. American Kempo, right? So, like Ed Parker had a heavy judo background. So I recognized like, okay, I know what this is. I know, you could just sense it and go and do it and go, okay. So that helped too. And also with Kempo, there's such a wealth of an arsenal of information where, you could pick something apart, like, technique 3, combination 3. I mean, just that alone, just that whole how to that to me is like just my pride and joy of that. I mean, because it's so basic and it's such a fun thing to do. I mean, oh my god, I it's like Christmas to me. You know what I mean? Or bending branch, menacing twirl, just like Christmas because it's so simple and functional, right? Like, and that's what I love about American Kempo is it's just once you vigorously practice, you'll get that down. And for me, being a spectrum guy, like, memory retention and all that. So to the positives of that, and really just practice, practice, and practice. And then when it just becomes like getting up and someone asks you what your name is and you can answer, it's kind of like that. That I enjoy because it's like, oh my God, I love this. I love it. It is awesome, especially too when you're working with a partner that'll be like, hey, let me help you tweak it this way to make it better, or and that's another thing too. Like when I train in anything, I like to stand in different spots and stuff like that. Like that's just my thing. Where it's like, you know, if you get used to comfortable training in one specific area of standing, then, it's not gonna be like in the street. I'm not in my spot, you know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna work that way. So I always like it takes me, not that long to pick up on a technique, but then I'd be like, can we move position? Like, can I stand where you are? Can I because again, the muscle memory, that's what practice is. So you practice, and at least I do in every part of the floor where that gives you the confidence of, okay, I'm walking down the street, God forbid something happens. The muscle memory of it is too. And that's another thing you have to train because, it's not going to be like when you're in the dojo, you're not going to be with people you like. It's not going to be in comfortable clothes. It's going to be you're in regular attire like we are or in formal attire and you move differently that way. That's how it is. So, stuff like that. And really, monkey around with that idea, and that's why I always train in different plots. I'll get a technique down, I go, "I wanna train in a different way because 'cause you'll move different, your body's like, "Wait a minute, I'm not standing it this way, I'm not hit." So, really challenging your mind like that is I mean, being a high IQ spectrum guy, that's how I live, but I would just say, like, to anyone listening or who's gonna get into Kempo, you know, do that and you'll be amazed, like, "Okay, I'll move differently," and you'll have a different reaction to it, you'll be like, "Oh my god, I didn't know I could do it at this way or, at this angle." So, really, really, do that and test yourself. And also, again, if you have to ask yourself, "Does this work for me?" Is this working? Like you said a few minutes ago about chasing rank. You know chasing rank, unfortunately, is a rampant thing in all arts, but, I would challenge anyone to say, that, you can always not accept it or rescind it. You can always say, "Well, I'm comfortable at this level. Let me make sure my curriculum is, at this level." And if you wanna and you know what? Honestly, if you wanna stay there, there's no shame in that. There's no shame in saying, I'm content to be whatever the rank is. I'm happy with that, and that's another thing too. Don't feel inadequate just because, and that's the whole thing of it, where it's again, like, I'm a third degree in judo, and it's like I've been offered higher and I don't want it. I'm happy where I am. Like I'm a happy boy. I'm just happy because again, like I'm not chasing that, and anything above that's honorary anyway. But again, be happy with what you're doing, and that's anything, especially in Kempo. Like, hey, if you're happy being a third degree brown belt and you want to stay there for the duration, hey, if that's working for you, good for you. And then if you feel, as many years as you feel, okay, now I feel genuinely ready that when I test when I go through the 3-2-1 system and I go for my black, I can look in the mirror and go, I deserve this genuinely. And that's another thing. I mean, take Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There are people who are content to be in their ranking because they're happy learning what they're learning, and that's another thing too. And back to judo, the Gracies, the Machados, they were all judo guys, and they adopted the judo ranking system into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So again, that's why in judo the highest you can get is a red belt. The pure red belt is the highest. That's the pride and joy, the dream of anybody in judo or Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So again, those are good things to aspire to, if you want to call that what it is, your level of training. And also, if you genuinely deserve that incentive, then you should go for it. But don't feel you're in a rush to get there because guess what? You know, I would rather you be the best purple belt or the best third degree brown or the best whatever. And I know when you leave, you can handle yourself as opposed to pushing some poor soul up the hill and they go, I have a black belt now. And they get lit up because they just don't have it. And they were just in it for the rank as opposed to, what is this about keeping myself safe? I mean, that's another thing where you got to watch that too. If somebody's just chasing that going, if that's all you want, then go on Amazon and get yourself a belt. You know what I mean? If that's what this is, if that's all you're chasing is this, then, you know, martial arts is not for you. You know what I mean? And that's another thing too, where, you know, that's a rampant thing. But, as I say, this is how I think. And I think that most people share this philosophy, which is a good thing, because that's another thing. I've seen that in things where people just, I want to get, I'm like, okay, but can you honestly tell me anything you're training that you feel secure that you walk out that door, you're not a hero, not an action hero, but you can keep yourself and the people safe? That's a real question. I mean, you could be, a black belt of a high rank or mid rank or just whatever. And then, if you're just chasing it, you're gonna get yourself hurt, God forbid, and the people around you. So, just buyer beware and lesson learned. So, that's a big part of it.
The mat and the streets, those are what's gonna show your rank, not some cloth around your waist. So
Yeah.
uh that's that's definitely something to, for those that are just out there chasing the ranks, the mat and the street are gonna show what your rank really is. So
Yeah, and again, the thing with that too is, again, I think that it's an individual journey, but again, and that's something you got to watch out for too. If somebody comes in and they want to be, the toughest cat in the world, whatever that may be, it's like I wouldn't train that person. Me personally, like if you want to go and on your own journey, that's your business. But I'm not going to impart the knowledge I was saying earlier to somebody who's going to do that because and you can read that pretty early. So most associations, most systems weed that out. What you got to watch out for are the indie guys, the guys that I'm whatever, and you try to be like, so okay, man, cool, show me, and then it's like, so that's another, that's another thing where with the advent of the internet, unfortunately, that gives quarter to a lot of perhaps fraudulent martial artists as well. But that's no surprise to anybody in general. So it's one of those things where watching something cool is one thing. Okay, that's fine. We all like to do that, but then to train with somebody, man, really, that's legitimacy in life is everything. But in life, I don't care what it is, whether you're the chairman of General Mills or you are a kitchen porter. Okay, you have to have a certain level of competency and legitimacy in anything you do. Integrity, honesty, hard work. You know, these are the things in life and in martial arts that go side by side. So again, watching some Zippo flashy cool nonsense is one thing, but going, I want to learn that. And when you call that person on respectfully, just say, hey man, what's your story? Can we talk? Can we do this? And it's a wall of, oh, it was a secret, and we met over here, and we flew to the Andes, just nonsense, right? Illogical. Hopefully you pick up on it and go, this person perhaps is not a legitimate martial artist. So he's gonna teach me the ancient art of crapola. So I don't want to learn that, right? And that's another thing. So, and I think that's more with again, goes back to common sense, which is not so common. But, just stuff like that, and that's just, par for the course. But, anybody listening out there, again, watching something cool is one thing, but if you reach out, we all have all the Zippo flashy devices. So if you want to learn something cool like that and the red flags such as that go, then yeah, that's not legitimate, whatever that art may be, whatever that style may be. So again, buyer beware with that stuff, really have a conversation with somebody, get to know them. And if they got certificates, they got all the, really honestly, go, hey, call the guys who taught me. And then, really just for full transparency, really, because, again, the student teacher relationship is the most sacred thing. Okay. The most sacred, and to abuse that to me, I find that morally reprehensible. So, that's it because, you're taking a young person with God only knows their internal strife or what they're dealing with. And, you know, you're going to believe the master, quote unquote. So, that to me, besides the financial part of it, which is also awful. Also, it's the betrayal of that trust between student and teacher. So, for anybody listening out there who, thinks, keep it simple. The easy way is not the martial art way. The easy way, if you, oh, this is easy. That's another, that's another, red herring. So, I mean, just again, be aware of these things. And I tell people all the time, if somebody's being a jerk online, whatever, don't even comment. Just let them go in obscurity. Don't waste mental energy that you don't have on some jerk or jerks. Just that's it. You don't have to watch it. Just that's it. Yeah, that's it. If they haunt you, you just block 'em, whatever. But don't put your mental energy on people that get you angry. No other reason than that. So again, stuff like that, I would say just be aware of that, be present that unfortunately there are people out there who you don't care and are not ethical in life and in martial arts. So be aware of these things, be omnipresent of these things, and as I say, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
if somebody's legit, they're gonna answer those questions. So you're gonna to worry about.
Yep, very nice, very nice. All right, so we're gonna move to our lightning round here. So got a few questions to wrap things up with. First one being, do you have a favorite technique?
In general, or just
Uh,
in campaign?
uh, yeah. If you let's let's since you've got multiple arts under your belt there, let's go ahead and get one for Kempo and one for not Kempo.
Okay. Kempo, oh my god, there's so many. Oh my god, well, combination 3, technique 3, my pride and joy. I like menacing twirl, I love that. Breaking branch and Kempo, those are my favorites. I mean, the terminology may be different also out there, so keep in mind, different syllabuses, but if you were to see what I'm talking about, you would say, "I know this has a different name or number." So, that's it now in judo, I love to grapple. I'm that guy. So a good, armbar takedown, something so basic like that. So I like that. And in Aikido, I love a good Zankyo, Nikio. That's like an arm drag takedown thing as well. So, stuff like that. I mean, those are my, again, just pride and joy, enjoyable all day long, twice on Sundays.
Very nice, very nice. All right, next question. Do you have a favorite form and or set?
Favorite fall. That's a beautiful question. I have a I like the I like the 5 block setting Kempo. So I like that. I like the, like, it does the 5, I get it wrong too all the time, but it's the 5 handset blocks, so I
Mhm.
like that in
Okay.
Kraken Kempo.
Yeah.
'Cause I like to move like that, you know what I mean? I like the handset movements, in Aikido, that's all form, so, I mean, again, certain things, like I just named are my favorites, and in Judo, just the grappling, I mean, I'm not a fan of the ground, I mean, I'll go to the ground, but I'm not like, "Oh my god," you know what I mean? So,
Mhm. Mhm.
but, oh, no, I love it. I love it all genuinely with Kempo because, again, there's still stuff that as I'm still going through, I'm like, "I have to do this differently, or I'm still learning." So, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, it's just I love it all, man.
Yeah, it's always evolving, always changing and growing. So good. All right. Next question: do you have a favorite weapon?
Favorite weapon? I like some sword stuff when it comes to Aikido, so I like to do that, and again, taking the open hand, sword stuff and putting a real sword there makes a big difference. Like, okay, this is why you're running an empty hand, so when you have a sword, I like that traditional movement of that, so I love that. When I can do that, maybe once a year, maybe once a month, when I can get a chance, I'm there.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Then I guess we're gonna do the last question. I've been kind of playing around with whether or not to split this up, but we'll just go with it one way today. Uh,
Sure.
and that is, if there's anyone you could train with, living or dead, fictional or non-fictional, besides Ed Parker, who would you want to be able to train with?
Besides fictional or not, well, I'm a big movie guy. I love movies. I'm that guy. So, for me, the Christian Bale Batman, the first one, where it explained everything, where he trained, who built the Batmobile, everything. Morgan Freeman at his greatest, who's always old, by the way. But if I had to train Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, just as that mentor, just that ice fight where he's that if fictional, that be the fella.
Very nice, very nice. Do you have a non-fictional person that like to throw in there?
Muhammad Ali, if he was alive, Muhammad Ali, hands down, I'd walk there barefoot in the snow to train with him without question.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Yeah, no, he's the greatest for a reason.
He really was the greatest, yeah.
Very nice, very nice. I like it. All right, so now we are at our point for shameless self promotion. So you can go ahead and plug anything you like, or if there's anything that you wanted to get out there that we didn't mention, now's your time, and let's hear it.
Sure. Well, for me, I do a lot of comedy stuff. I share a lot of that martial arts stuff, political stuff, all that good stuff. I share a lot of stuff about like autism spectrum stuff. Get the message out there. I mean, I diversify. I'm a crazy sports guy, as you know. So, stuff like that. So, for anybody who wants to, follow me, Sal Luciano on Facebook. I'm always doing something positive out there. Um, you know, Big following, big community. So stuff like that. If anybody wants to follow me, Sal Luciano on Facebook, I'll be there. Martial art wise, or acting or stand up wise, let me know what you need, and let's build good community.
Very nice. Yeah, I'll make sure to get those get your links and stuff in the show notes. So yeah, make sure to send me any of those that you want in there, and I'll put them in. But yeah, no, I thank you so much for taking the time to chit chat with me and tell your story. We'll definitely have to do this again and
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
get into to more of the journey and talk some movies and all kinds of things like that. So,
absolutely.
yeah, I thank you so much again, and
Thank
I
you.
will be in touch when this is ready to go out. And yeah, just thank you, and we'll keep an eye on all the great things that you're working on.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to My Empty Hands. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. If you didn't enjoy it, please share it with an enemy. If you'd like to be a guest, or if you would like to recommend a guest for the show, please email me at podcast@talkingkempo.com. Thank you.